They survived the torture, but only because a human fought the impossible. The broken signal Dex Martinez had always prided himself on being unbreakable. 23 years in the communications corps, survived 3 deep space missions, and never, once let the isolation get to him. But that was before the Greys figured out that breaking a human mind wasn't about pain. It was about time, silence, and the slow erosion of everything that made you yourself. The cell wasn't a cell exactly. It was a perfect white cube, 10 feet on each side with no visible seams or doors. The light came from everywhere and nowhere, soft and constant like being inside a fluorescent bulb. Dex had been here for, he'd lost count. Days? Weeks? The Greys had taken his chronometer along with everything else, leaving him with nothing but the jumpsuit that never got dirty and the growing certainty that he was losing his mind. They'd started simple. Questions about Earth's military capabilities, the location of colony ships, standard interrogation stuff. Dex had given them the usual name, rank, serial number routine, expecting beatings or worse. Instead, they'd just left him alone. For what felt like days, nothing but white walls and silence so complete he could hear his own heartbeat like thunder. Then came the voices. Not real voices. Dex wasn't that far gone yet. Memories, playing back in perfect clarity. His mother calling him for dinner when he was 7. His first girlfriend whispering his name. The sound of his squad laughing at one of his stupid jokes during the Mars campaign. At first, it was almost comforting. Then he realized the voices were getting the details wrong. His mother called him Dexter in the memory, but she'd never used his full name. His girlfriend had brown eyes, not blue. His squad wasn't laughing at his joke. They were laughing at him, cruel and mocking in a way that had never happened. The Greys were inside his head, editing his past, making him doubt everything he remembered about himself. Psychological restructuring, they called it when they bothered to explain. Your species' attachment to individual identity is fascinating. We're curious to see how long it takes to dissolve. Commander Thale was the one who spoke to him during the sessions. 7 feet tall, with skin like tarnished silver, and too many joints in all the wrong places. Their voice came through a translator that made everything sound like whispers in a cathedral, cold and echoing. "Tell us about your childhood pet," Thale said during one session, their 3 eyes fixed on Dex with the intensity of a scientist, studying a bug. "Didn't have one," Dex replied, though even as he said it, he could almost remember a golden retriever named something. Rex? No. That wasn't right. The memory felt real and false at the same time. "You had a cat," Thale corrected. "Orange tabby. You called it Whiskers." "No, But the image was there now, clear as day. A fat orange cat sleeping on his bed, purring against his chest. Except the bed was wrong and the room was wrong and the whole memory felt like a movie he'd watched once and forgotten. That's when Dex understood. They weren't just torturing him. They were rewriting him, piece by piece, memory by memory, turning him into something else, someone else. Maybe that's what had happened to the other humans who'd gone missing during first contact. Maybe there were dozens of them walking around with gray-edited memories thinking they were still themselves. The worst part was that it was working. After weeks of isolation and false memories, Dex could feel himself starting to crack. He'd catch himself accepting the revised versions of his past, finding it easier to agree than to fight. During the deepest, darkest moments, he'd even started to wonder if maybe the Greys were right. Maybe he wasn't who he thought he was. Maybe none of it had ever been real. That's when she came. The first sign was the lights. The perfect, constant illumination flickered, just for a second, but enough to make Dex's heart race. Then the walls shuddered, a vibration so subtle he almost missed it. Footsteps in the corridor outside, muffled but definitely there. The door, that wasn't a door, suddenly was. A rectangular outline appearing in the wall as it slid open with a soft hiss. Dex expected to see Commander Thale or one of the other Greys ready for another session. Instead, a figure in black tactical gear stepped through, rifle raised and ready. Human. Definitely human, but wrong somehow. Her movements were too fast, too precise, like she was running on overdrive. Her left arm was mechanical from the elbow down, all carbon fiber and exposed servos. Her face was young but hard, with eyes that reflected light like a cat's in the dim emergency lighting that had replaced the white glow. "Dex Martinez?" she asked, voice clipped and professional. "That's me," he said, or tried to. His voice cracked, from disuse. "I think." She moved to him in 3 quick strides, pulling a small device from her belt. "Memory fragmenter," she explained, pressing it to his temple. This might hurt. The pain was immediate and intense, like someone had shoved a live wire into his brain. But with it came clarity, real memories flooding back, pushing out the false ones. His mother's face, actually, his mother's face. His girlfriend's green, eyes not brown, not blue. His squad's genuine laughter, warm and brotherly. "Who are you?" he gasped as the device powered down. "Nira Voss," she said, helping him to his feet. "Resistance. We've been looking for you for 3 weeks." 3 weeks? Dex's legs felt like rubber. "How long was I?" 2 months, she said, guiding him toward the door. "Give or take. Hard to tell with gray tech." They stepped into the corridor, and Dex saw the bodies. 3 grays lay sprawled on the floor, their silver blood pooling beneath them. Nira's rifle was still smoking. "You killed them," he said stupidly. "They were torturing you," she replied, checking her weapon. Seemed like the right response. Alarms began to wail, a sound like broken glass being dragged across metal. Red lights flashed in the walls, casting everything in hellish shadows. "Time to go," Nira said, breaking into a run. Dex followed, his legs remembering how to work as adrenaline flooded his system. They ran through corridors that twisted and curved in ways that hurt to look at, past cells and chambers that Dex tried not to think about. Behind them he could hear the sound of pursuit, the clicking, chittering communication of the Greys and the heavy footsteps of their security drones. "This way," Nira called, diving through a maintenance hatch that barely looked big enough for a person. Dex squeezed through after her, his jumpsuit tearing on the rough edges. They crawled through ductwork that was definitely not designed for human bodies, the metal groaning under their weight. Somewhere behind them he heard cutting tools starting up. "Where are we going?" he whispered. "Docking Bay 7, she replied, not slowing down. "Got a ship waiting." "How did you even find me?" She paused, looking back at him in the dim light filtering through the grates. "You've been broadcasting," she said. "Your implant, it's been sending out a distress signal this whole time. Took us a while to track it through the gray jamming." Dex touched his temple, feeling the small bump of the communication implant every officer carried. He'd forgotten it was there. "If you could track me, why didn't you come sooner?" Nira's enhanced eyes reflected the light as she looked at him. "Because we needed to know what they were doing to you first. What they were learning." The ductwork opened into a larger space, a maintenance bay filled with alien machinery that hummed and sparked. Nira dropped down first, her mechanical arm extending to help Dex down. "Learning?" he asked. "They're not just torturing humans for fun," she said, moving toward a heavy blast door. "They're studying us, trying to understand how our minds work. The Resistance thinks they're planning something big." She pressed her palm to a scanner beside the door, and it slid open with a grinding sound. Beyond was the docking bay, a vast space filled with gray ships that looked like they'd been grown rather than built. In the center sat something that was definitely not gray technology, a sleek black fighter with human markings, its engines already spinning up. "That's our ride," Nira said, but her voice was tense. "Problem is, it looks like they knew we were coming." Dex followed her gaze and saw them, dozens of Greys surrounding the ship, their weapons raised. Commander Thale stood at their head, his 3 eyes fixed on Dex with something that might have been disappointment. "Mr. Martinez," Thale's voice echoed across the bay. "You're leaving so soon? But we haven't finished our work together." Nira raised her rifle, but Dex put a hand on her arm. "What work?" he called back, his voice stronger now. "Trying to turn me into someone else?" "Trying to understand you," Thale replied. "Your species is unique. Individual consciousness is so rare in the galaxy. We wanted to learn how it functions, how it can be modified. And if I don't want to be your lab rat? Thale's head tilted in what might have been amusement. Then, you'll die here, along with your friend. Nira's finger tightened on the trigger. Your call, she muttered. Dex looked at the assembled Greys, at Commander Thale's expectant expression, at the ship that represented freedom but might as well have been on the other side of the galaxy. Then he smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. You know what your problem is, he called to Thale. You understand human psychology just fine. You know how to break us, how to rebuild us, but you don't understand human stupidity. And with that he ran straight at the Greys, screaming at the top of his lungs. The bay erupted in chaos. Nira's rifle chattered as she laid down covering fire. Dex dove and rolled, using the alien ships as cover while energy bolts sizzled past his head. He could hear Nira's mechanical arm whirring as she reloaded, could hear Thale's voice raised in what sounded like frustration. Somehow, impossibly, they made it to the ship. Nira slammed the hatch behind them as Dex threw himself into the co-pilot seat. Can you fly this thing? He gasped. Better than you, she replied, her hands flying over the controls. The ship lifted off with a roar, spinning away from the station as more energy bolts streaked past. Dex watched through the viewport as the Grey facility fell away, becoming just another dot of light in the star field. So, he said, trying to catch his breath. What now? Nira looked at him, her enhanced eyes unreadable. Now we find out what they really wanted from you, and why they were so eager to let you go. Dex frowned. Let me go? They were shooting at us. Were they? She asked. Or were they hurting us exactly where they wanted us to run? As if in answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Commander Thale's voice filled the cabin, calm and satisfied. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. You've been most educational. We look forward to seeing what you do next. The signal cut out, leaving them alone in the dark between the stars. Dex looked at Nira, understanding beginning to dawn. They wanted me to escape, he said. She nodded grimly. Question is, why? Behind them, the Grey station continued its slow orbit around the gas giant, patient and waiting. And deep in its heart, something that had been carefully planted in Dex's mind began to wake up, ready to fulfill its purpose. The real torture, he realized, was just beginning. The price of freedom. The resistance base was nothing like Dex had expected. Carved into the heart of a hollowed-out asteroid, it was a maze of tunnels and chambers that hummed with barely contained energy. Dozens of people moved through the corridors, some fully human, others enhanced like Nira with mechanical limbs, cybernetic eyes, or stranger modifications that made Dex's skin crawl. Welcome to Haven, Nira said, leading him through the main hub. Last free human settlement in this sector. Dex stared at a woman whose skull had been partially replaced with a transparent dome, her brain visible beneath pulsing neural interfaces. Free might be a relative term, he muttered. Freedom isn't free, said a voice from behind them. They turned to see a man approaching, tall, lean, with silver hair and eyes that had been replaced entirely with mechanical sensors that whirred softly as they focused. Especially when you're fighting a war against telepathic fascists. Dex. Martinez, meet Zephyr Chen, Nira said. He runs this operation. Zephyr extended a hand, and Dex noticed that his fingers had been replaced with delicate mechanical instruments. We've been very interested in meeting you, Mr. Martinez. You've caused quite a stir. I've been a prisoner for 2 months, Dex said. How much of a stir could I cause? More than you know. Zephyr gestured for them to follow him deeper into the base. Tell me, during your captivity, did you ever feel like you were being prepared for something? Dex thought about the memory sessions, the careful way Commander Thale had questioned him, the almost surgical precision of the psychological torture. Maybe. Why? They entered a chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts, troop movements and streams of data Dex couldn't begin to interpret. At the center stood a massive projection of what looked like a brain, but not human. The neural pathways pulsed with alien geometries that hurt to look at directly. "Meet the collective," Zephyr said. "The gray hive mind. Every gray you've ever seen is connected to this thing. They share thoughts, memories, experiences. Individual consciousness doesn't exist for them. So they're studying us because we're different," Dex said. "They're studying us because we're impossible," Nira corrected. "To them, individual consciousness shouldn't be able to exist. We should have evolved into a hive mind like every other intelligent species they've encountered, but we didn't." Zephyr manipulated the display, zooming in on specific neural clusters. "They've been trying to understand how human consciousness works for decades, capturing specimens, studying our brains, mapping our neural patterns. But they keep running into the same problem, which is, they can copy the structure, but they can't copy the chaos." Zephyr smiled grimly. "Human consciousness isn't just about neural pathways and synaptic connections. It's about the random noise, the contradictions, the ability to hold two opposing thoughts simultaneously and somehow make it work." Dex felt a chill run down his spine. "What does this have to do with me?" Zephyr and Nira exchanged glances. "Show him," Zephyr said. Nira led Dex to another console, this one displaying what looked like brain scans. "These are your neural patterns," she said, "taken during your communication core physical 3 years ago." The display showed a complex web of neural activity, but Dex couldn't see anything special about it. "Looks normal to me. Now look at this." Nira switched to another scan. "This is your brain pattern from yesterday after we pulled you out." The difference was immediately obvious. The new scan showed the same basic structure, but with additional pathways, new connections that glowed with an alien light. Something had been added to his brain, woven so seamlessly into his consciousness that he couldn't even feel it. "They put something in me," Dex whispered. "A neural seed," Zephyr confirmed, "designed to interface with the collective. But here's the interesting part. It's not meant to control you. It's meant to translate you." "Translate me into what?" "Into something they can understand." Nira's voice was gentle but firm. "Dex, you're not just a prisoner who escaped. You're a Trojan horse. They let you go because you're carrying a piece of their consciousness, and it's carrying a piece of yours back to them." Dex sank into a nearby chair, the weight of realization crushing down on him. "So everything I've been thinking, feeling, remembering, they're learning from it?" "Not just learning," Zephyr said. "Mapping, creating a template they can use to understand human consciousness on a fundamental level. Once they crack the code, they can start rewriting us on a species-wide level." "How long do I have?" Dex asked. "The seed is still integrating," Nira said, checking her scanner. "Maybe 48 hours before it fully activates. After that, I become their window into humanity," Dex finished, "or their weapon against it," Zephyr added darkly. Dex stood up, pacing to the edge of the chamber. Through a transparent aluminum window, he could see stars wheeling slowly past as the asteroid rotated. Somewhere out there was Earth, and billions of people who had no idea what was coming for them. "There has to be a way to remove it," he said. "We've tried," Nira said. "The seed is integrated too deeply into your neural pathways. Removing it would cause massive brain damage. You'd be a vegetable." "Better than being their puppet." "Maybe," Zephyr said, "but there might be another option." He manipulated the holographic display again, bringing up tactical charts and fleet positions. "The collective's main processing node is located on their mothership, about 6 hours from here at maximum burn. If we could get close enough." "You want to attack their mothership with one fighter?" Dex asked incredulously. "Not attack," Zephyr corrected. "Infiltrate. The neural seed works both ways. It's designed to let them understand you, but it also creates a connection they can't easily sever. If we could get you close enough to their central processing core, I could feed them something they can't digest." Dex realized. "Overload them with pure human chaos." "Exactly. But it would be a one-way trip. The feedback would probably kill you, and even if it didn't, you'd be stranded on their ship." Dex looked at the brain scan again, at the alien pathways threading through his consciousness like silver wire. He thought about Commander Thale's satisfied voice, about the billions of humans who didn't know they were being hunted. "When do we leave?" he asked. "Dex, no," Nira said. "There has to be another way. There isn't, and you know it." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not the broken prisoner she'd rescued, but someone who had found his purpose. "This is what I'm for. This is why they chose me." "Because of your neural pattern?" Zephyr asked. "Because I'm stubborn," Dex said with a weak smile. "Because I'm the kind of idiot who runs straight at the enemy when the smart play is to surrender. They think they understand human psychology, but they missed the most important part, which is, we're not just individuals. We're individuals who choose to sacrifice for each other. They can't process that because their hive mind doesn't allow for true selflessness." Nira stepped closer to him. "Dex, please. Let us find another way. There isn't time." He could feel something stirring in the back of his mind, alien thoughts trying to surface. "The seed is activating faster than you thought. I can feel them in there trying to map my responses." Zephyr nodded grimly. "Then we go now." Nira prepped the ship, full stealth configuration. "I'm coming with you," she said. "No," Dex said firmly. "You get me there, but you don't come aboard. Someone needs to survive this to tell people what happened." The flight to the collective mothership took 4 hours, moving through hyperspace in carefully calculated jumps to avoid detection. Dex spent most of the time trying to keep his thoughts chaotic, flooding his mind with random memories, jokes, fragments of songs, anything to confuse the alien presence he could feel growing stronger. "Tell me about the enhancements," he said to Nira during a quiet moment. "Why did you do it?" She was quiet for a long time, her mechanical hand steady on the controls. "After first contact went wrong, after they started taking people, some of us realized we needed to become something more than human to fight them. The modifications aren't just weapons, they're armor for our minds." "Do you regret it?" "Every day," she said softly. "But I regret what they did to us more." The mothership appeared on their screens like a floating city, all curves and biomechanical surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. It was beautiful in an utterly alien way, and Dex had to fight the urge to stare at it. "There," Nira said, pointing to a section that looked different from the rest. "Maintenance bay. Should be lightly guarded." "Should be. This is the part where we find out if they're expecting us." They docked without incident, the ship's stealth systems apparently working. Nira handed Dex a small device that looked like a neural interface headset. "Amplifier," she explained. "When you reach their core, this will boost the feedback signal. It'll make sure the chaos gets through." Dex clipped it to his temple, feeling it sync with his neural implant. "How will you know if it worked?" "Trust me," she said. "We'll know." They embraced briefly at the airlock, and Dex tried not to think about how she felt smaller than he'd expected, more fragile despite all her enhancements. "Try not to be so emotionally distant," he said, echoing his words from their first meeting. She almost smiled. "Try not to be so noble." The interior of the mothership was like walking through the inside of a living creature. The walls pulsed, with organic rhythms, and the air tasted of copper and ozone. Dex followed the mental map Zephyr had given him, moving deeper into the ship's heart. He passed chambers full of sleeping greys, their bodies connected to the ship by umbilical cords of living metal. In other rooms, he saw humans, or what had been humans, floating in tanks of viscous fluid, their minds being slowly dissected and catalogued. The central core was exactly what he'd expected, and nothing like it at the same time. It was a vast spherical chamber filled with neural networks that stretched like silver webs between pulsing nodes of alien consciousness. At the center floated the collective's primary processing matrix, a brain the size of a small building, its surface crawling with electrical activity. As soon as Dex entered the chamber, he felt the neural seed activate fully. Alien thoughts flooded his mind, trying to map and categorize every aspect of his consciousness. He could feel them dissecting his memories, his emotions, his sense of self. But instead of fighting it, he embraced it. He opened his mind completely, letting them see everything, not just his thoughts but the contradictions that made them human. His love for Nira mixed with his fear of death, his desire to save humanity tangled with his knowledge that he was probably dooming himself. His pride in his sacrifice, warring with his terror at what was happening to his mind. The collective recoiled, unable to process the chaos. In their hive mind, such contradictions were impossible. Thoughts were clean, logical, ordered. But human consciousness was built on paradox, on the ability to hold multiple truths simultaneously and still function. Dex activated the amplifier, and the feedback loop exploded through the ship's neural networks. He felt his consciousness fracturing, splitting into 1,000 pieces that carried all the beautiful, terrible chaos of human thought into the collective's ordered systems. Alarms began to wail throughout the ship. The processing matrix convulsed, its electrical patterns becoming erratic as it tried to integrate thoughts that couldn't be integrated. Grays throughout the ship began to collapse as their shared consciousness overloaded. In the resistance base, Zephyr and the others watched their screens as the collective mothership's energy signatures went wild. Across the galaxy, Gray ships suddenly stopped moving, their crews overwhelmed by a cascade of chaotic human thought. "It worked," Zephyr whispered. But Nira was watching a different screen, the bio readings from Dex's neural implant. His brain activity was spiking beyond sustainable levels, his consciousness burning itself out like a star-going supernova. Aboard the mothership, Dex felt himself dissolving into the collective, his individual thoughts becoming part of something vast and strange. But even as his sense of self faded, he held on to one last thought. Not a memory or an emotion, but a choice. The choice to sacrifice everything for people he'd never meet, for a future he'd never see. It was the most human thing of all, and it broke the collective's ability to understand them completely. The mothership went dark. Across the galaxy, the Gray invasion fleet powered down as their shared consciousness collapsed into chaotic fragments. They would recover eventually, but it would take decades to rebuild what Dex had shattered in a few moments of perfect human chaos. Nira stared at the silent readings from his implant, tears streaming down her face. Somewhere in the wreckage of the collective's consciousness, she hoped, a part of him lived on. Not as a prisoner or a weapon, but as proof that some things were worth dying for. In the end, they had survived the torture, but only because one human had been willing to fight the impossible and lose everything to win it. The war wasn't over, but for the first time in years, humanity had hope. And sometimes, hope was enough.